in the airport, a really interesting thing happened to me.
This has always happened to you.
Yeah.
There's always something.
There's always something. I feel like I attract it to myself. It could be. So I'm standing in line at the security airport, slightly amused by the politically correct element of frisking people or as they go through. Then there's this 6'4" terrorist with a shoulder-mounted RPG walks in and Granny Davis is getting frisked down. And I'm watching this happen. And I see a guy next to me. He looks rather of a Middle Eastern complexion. So I wanted to start a conversation with the guy. I said, "So it's pretty hot and sticky outside, pretty miserable. How's it where you're from?" He said, "I am from Phoenix, Arizona." And at this point, tolerable. And I said to myself in my head, this guy is from Phoenix. You know when you get a customer service call, you call customer service, and you hear, "Hello, this is Kevin Smith from Kentucky. How can I help you?" Okay. That guy's from Kentucky, like this guy's from Phoenix, Arizona. So I said, "Where were you before Phoenix, Arizona? Was it always like this for you?" And he said, "Well, I was 30 years in Egypt. So now we're getting somewhere." So I said, "So it's pretty wild over there right now. A lot is going on. You know, I'm from Israel. We're neighbors." Yeah, I said, "You know, a lot of things are happening. Are we good? Is everything all right with us?" And he said, "Well, finally, it will be for the people to decide." And I said, You know, when I was doing some thinking about this, the people to decide, and from one element, he's right. It is time for the people to decide whether they're going to be a friendly country to Israel, not just one corrupt dictator that will decide such a thing. On the other hand, 90+% of Egyptians have a negative perception of Jews in Israel. Over 80% of them want to cut the hands off children who steal, want to stone to death someone who converts from Islam, kill idolaters. They're a very intense and wild nation, and this is the type of people we're facing. And they have the largest navy, one of the largest armies. They have a tremendous force against us, and that could change at a moment, as we've seen is happening all over the place throughout the world right now. Now, when you think about Israel, it not only makes biblical and moral sense to stand with Israel and the Jewish people, but strategic sense. Because Egypt could churn at the drop of a hat. And 20, 30 years of America putting hundreds of millions of dollars, making this the strongest military, can turn against this country at the slightest revolution. But in Israel, it doesn't matter if the relative right or the relative left are in office. It doesn't matter who. We will always stand with the United States of America because of the shared biblical values, because we are connected at the soul and not through simple strategy and practicality.
We'll look back, historians will look back at this time and see this as the turning point. I mean, as we live our lives every day here in America and in Israel, and we see revolutions happening all across the Middle East, Bahrain, Yemen, Jordan, Egypt, Iraq, Iran, all of these revolutions that are happening, the Talmud tells us that right before the redemption, revolutions across the Middle East will happen. These revolutions, in their core, all of them are striving for freedom. And in fact, that is what the Messianic era is. That's what we all hope for. A world free to worship freely. A world free to be free in our homeland. Each nation in their land free to be who they want. And it's unbelievable to think that these revolutions started with Egypt. That was, although it was Obama's first vacation to the Middle East, that was his light. Woo, let's make friends with Egypt. They're the light of democracy, I guess, in Egypt, and that didn't turn out so well for him. But when you open up to Isaiah chapter 19, you'll see something incredible. A prophecy that speaks of our time. In verse 2, speaking of our day, as we see Egyptians rising up against other Egyptians, cities against cities, tribes against tribes, a civil war, it says, I will cause Egyptians to fight Egyptians. Each one will battle his brother, and each his fellow, city against city, kingdom against kingdom. What we are seeing today was seen thousands of years ago. And we are now living in the footsteps of the times that Isaiah spoke about. So although it may be 2 steps forward, 4 steps back, and who knows what the leadership of Egypt will come. Maybe it will be the Muslim Brotherhood. Maybe it will be a hand of Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas. It's really hard to know. But what we see is that every single one of the signs are now coming to pass. And although it may look scary, we should take strength and know that God is on our side.